Bachelder. She was born in Fayette, Maine in 1816, and her family lived on a farm, and she had lots of brothers and sisters, and they were very poor, and life was difficult. Anyways, Emiline, she was pretty as a princess. So one day, a businessman from Maine, Massachusetts, arrived at their farm, and seeing the poor conditions that the family had to live under, that businessman, he suggested that Emiline come and work for him in his cotton mills, and he convinced the family to send her. The businessman explained that if Emiline worked in the cotton mills, she could send very needed money back home to the family. So it would be a good thing. So anyways, her family, they didn't really want to send young Emiline away at the early age of 13, but they talked it over and they decided it would be the best thing, because the family was in such desperate circumstances. So Emiline went with the businessman to a place called Lowell, Massachusetts, to work in his cotton mills. And Emiline was a good worker. She was fast and efficient. But the new environment was just about too much for Emiline, and it was much more than she was accustomed to. And not many of these people were friendly to poor Emiline. But then there was one person, a young foreman, who was very friendly to her. And Emiline, being young and naive, she gave in to the young man's advances, and she turned up pregnant. And Emiline, being only 13 years old, was pregnant, and she was 14 when she gave birth to a baby boy. Now, Emiline decided to keep this a secret to the people living back home, which was a very good idea. So, she kept all these things secret. And when she had the baby boy, there was a young, childless couple who wanted to take the baby, and they were willing to pay Emeline's living expenses. And the young couple paid for Emeline's trip back home also. So anyways, Emiline returned home, and she worked very hard in the fields so she could help her family. But Emiline was very reluctant to engage in social gatherings in the community. And as time passed by, her parents just couldn't understand why Emiline paid no attention to the advances of young men. For you see, Emiline was very pretty. Like I said before, she was pretty as a princess. So it came to pass when Emiline was in her early 30s, she was still working at home. A young man was passing through town. He was going to help build a highway, and he decided to board at Emiline family's farm. Now this young man, he was very nice and pleasant, and with each other. They decided to get married, and they lived in a little cottage down by the seaside. Emiline and her young husband were very happy. But then a sad thing happened. They had been married only a little less than a year when his relatives from Massachusetts decides to come and pay them a visit. Now, as soon as the relatives saw that he had married his own mother, they were just horribly surprised. They were shocked. And can you even imagine how bewildered Emiline and her young husband must have been when, without a moment's hesitation, these relatives just blurted out the terrible news that Emiline had married her own illegitimate son that she gave up years before? Can you even imagine the nightmarish realization that they were not only related, but that they, in fact, were mother and son? So then, tragically, but necessarily, the marriage had to be annulled and declared broken up. And the young man reluctantly said goodbye to Emiline and left to never return again. I can just imagine Emiline feeling a desperate mixture of heartbreak and shame over these happenings. I can also imagine her state of mind of fright of the reactions of the townspeople when they were to learn of the news. So these relatives wasted no time in getting the word out about Emiline marrying her own son. And as a result, she was ostracized. Now, this meant that she was excluded from society. She was excluded from friendship, conversation, privileges. She was banished, cast out, shunned and isolated, snubbed and rejected. Poor Emiline. I don't think Emiline deserved to be treated in this terrible way at all. I just think it's horrible the way these people treated Emiline. And for the remainder of her life, she lived in dismal poverty and extreme suffering, with only a few citizens willing to help her in secret. Emiline died a sad and most unnecessary death of starvation at age 81, and buried in a grave that no one cared to mark. What a very sad, devastating story this is.